The Fellblade. Welcome, gentle listener, I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and Lords of War of the Warhammer 40k setting. The grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. If you wish to see the channel flourish, then like and subscribe. But also consider joining our Patreon or throwing a one-off tip in the form of a super thanks, if I have indeed earned your bounty. And today, we shall start a mini-run of entries on the most grotesque and devastating of all the wargear found in the Age of Darkness and subsequent Age of the Imperium and Indomitus. Yes, we are going to know the Lords of War. Now, what is a Lord of War? Simply put, these are titanic beasts that stalk the battlefields of the Age of Darkness and Age Indomitus. They are the heaviest wargear known to each of the factions, forces, and formations, and most armies have at least a few options in this weight category. A Lord of War is an extraordinary thing to see, oh yes it is, because they are usually so rare that they are practically mythical or so potent that few survive any encounter with them, and this in turn means that anyone on a battlefield that demands the use of a Lord of War will find it equally difficult to survive the situation. The calculation is excruciatingly direct. If your side needs to deploy a single or multiple Lords of War, then the target of the attack or the force defended against will have equal assets of their own. The most obvious example of Lords of War are the god engines of the Ecclesia Titanicus, the Imperial Titans. Now most know that the only time a Titan maniple is deployed is to counter the existence of another Titan force amongst the enemy. This is because the Titans, or any Lord of War, is such an important asset that they simply cannot be thrown away. Most are incredibly resource-hungry, if they are still made at all. And if they are still constructed by the Forge Worlds of the Imperium, it is usually in incredibly low numbers that would never match attrition rates if they were to be deployed as mainstays of the army. There are exceptions, of course, but they are more proof of the rule than refutations. Only in system-defining confrontations will you see even one, let alone multiple, Lords of War used in combat, or if there is simply nothing to lose. The example would be if a Tyranid or Chaos Force tilts at a Forge or War world. Then, in these circumstances, there really is no reason to keep them out of the fighting, as a loss will result in their destruction anyway. Yet in most situations, in the grim darkness of the far future, a Lord of War will be utilized for a very specific task, then withdrawn and taken back into orbit and held safely away from the attritional warfare that dominates the battlefield of the 42nd millennium. Now the Age of Darkness, the period of the Horus Heresy, was utterly different, but we shall get into that in due course. And today we explore one of the tanks that are classified as a Lord of War, the fearsome Fellblade. The Fellblade, how I adore thee, and cannot wait to own one when they come out in plastic, thanks of course to my patrons and the donators of super thanks. But what is a Fellblade? Ostensibly, the Fellblade is a massive tank, but this is reductionism bordering on criminality, for by this definition, the Fellblade could be placed alongside other tank Lords of War such as the Shadow Sword, Baneblade, or even the Death Hammer. Yet even amongst such illuminous and terrifying company, the Fellblade stands head and shoulders above. It is a technological marvel that is leaps ahead of its contemporaries and rivals to the crown. Originally designed on the Forge World of Tigris from various STC patterns, it was a cutting edge of technology in an era where humanity was rediscovering its technological excellence. The Great Crusade was based on the domination of the galaxy, the freeing of all of the human colonies across said galaxy. But it reaped huge secondary benefits. As each colony was returned to the Imperial fold, sometimes, just sometimes, they would have technology or templates that were not extant in the Great Crusade. This is one of the many reasons that it escalated not only in scope, but in quality, with many colonies rediscovered. Simply put, the Great Crusade also doubled as a colossal scavenger hunt, and amongst the technological templates was a basis for the Baneblade and Deathhammer. In the Great Crusade, the Mechanicum, who would soon become the Mechanicus, were more bold and less dogmatic. When they found new tech, they incorporated it swiftly and were able, at a push, to even manipulate and enhance their designs. They actually innovated and improved back then. And this is the origin of the dread Fellblade. The Fellblade was a marvel of ingenuity and progress applied to the art of war. It had an atomantic arc reactor, giving it a beating heart that could generate more sheer power than anything of commensurate size. Twinned with a falchion, these tanks had a power output that permitted them to charge the largest weapons found outside of a Titan or starship. Even so, they were constructed of the same materials used for Titans: reinforced metaplas alloys and ceramite outer armor that protected against not only enemy fire, but also extreme weather or atmospheric conditions. You could quite literally drive this tank through a lava flow and come out the other end intact. Although it did not have atomantic fields like the Leviathan, nor the void shields of the Titans, it was extremely durable, and its only real threats were other lords of war, or concentrated and near-perpetual melter fire. Now we stop the teasing, and get on to the part we are all here for really: the firepower. And what a cornucopia of carnage they collected on this one chassis. On its sides, in the sponsons, there were either twin-linked quad las cannon arrays, or the terrifying laser destroyers. Weapons so powerful they could scythe through even the heaviest of fortress walls and punch through tanks like they were made of cardboard. And these were the secondary weapons. Its main body had up to 3 sets of secondary weapons as well, being heavy bolters, melters or flamers for close-up encounters with rushing hordes. Its front was affixed with a demolisher cannon, the same weapon of Vindicator fame. This was another backup weapon, imagine that. But of course, the main turret had the incredibly advanced accelerator cannons. Not 1, but 2, just in case, eh? With practically no recoil, these cannon could be argued to be one of the most accurate weapons fielded by an Astartes force. Linked to the Logis engine and the machine spirit of the tank, there would be nowhere to hide from this weapon. With the extreme range of it, there would certainly be no place to run. The accelerator cannon used vacuum-based overpressure mechanisms to propel these hyper-dense and devastating payloads to distances that could be matched only by weapons of the Titans. The cannon could fire 2 forms of payload, as usual. The standard, really. One was armor-piercing shells, and the other, as usual, was a high-explosion fragmentation shell. Either fired from this weapon will rend armor and annihilate near anything they fired upon. Entire squads and formations of infantry would be exterminated if hit by their fragmentation shells, again leaving absolutely nowhere to hide. Its enhanced sensors, in collaboration with the mighty machine spirit, gave the tank commander a stratagem terminal beyond the usual, and by quite some mark. And it made this not just a tank, not just a weapon of destruction, but also a makeshift command center at the drop of a hat. It truly is a lord of war. While deployed amongst the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, they were most often driven by chapter serfs, which is no small thing, as despite that they would be baseline human beings, they were once aspirants. They did not quite make it to the grade of being inducted into the Legiones Astartes, but they were not just run-of-the-mill line infantry either. They were some of the most potent and capable humans our race has ever seen, just not quite exceptional enough to wear the warplate of the Space Marine. Of course, where such a rare asset takes to the field in the modern era, they are entirely crewed by Astartes now. Yet they are so rare, so unique, it is often only at the direct order of the chapter master that they can be deployed at all. If the chapter of Marines has even one left. The most notable users of the Fellblade were, unsurprisingly, the Imperial Fists, the Fighting First, the Dark Angels, the Salamanders, and, of course, the Iron Warriors. The Iron Hands as well, one might presume, but it is not stated. Now there are not believed to be any left amongst the traitor forces, so when one does arrive on a battlefield, the Loyalists know instantly that the Chaos Force is not some renegade fallen chapter, but the strength of old, the warriors of the Long War. And the units are not being produced in the Imperium, or if they are, it is at such a negligible quantity that they may as well not exist. And only first and second founding chapters have even a chance of having such a behemoth in their arsenals. But this is due to the way that the Space Marines have changed in their role. During the Great Crusade, the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines, were the real line infantry, the real line army. They were supported by assets from the Solar Auxilia, Mechanicum, Legio Titanica, and even militia. These are the forces holding regions, sometimes being herded out into fire to absorb the ammunition of the enemy, looking at you, 12th and 4th Legions, but they were not the true combat force that did the real fighting. But now, in the era Indomitus, it is the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Guard, upon whose shoulders this task falls hardest. The Space Marines execute enemy leadership in decapitation strikes, break sieges with valiant assaults, smash foes with swift harassment, and corral them into killing zones. But they do not truly engage in grinding wars of attrition anymore, unless it is their own kind who are the foe, as seen in the Badab War. They act more like special forces, and thus do not require the might of such vehicles any longer. On balance, the super heavy tanks, those approaching the Lords of War like the Baneblade and Shadow Sword, are given to the Imperial Guard, as they should be. Thus, the dereliction of the Fellblade was not just a lack of technological skill or production capacity after the Horus Heresy brought the Imperium to its knees. It was also due to the fact its combat role had simply disappeared. And now, even those Fellblades that are still operational are cosseted and protected, never seeing service due to one simple fact. Space Marines may know no fear, but they can know shame. And they defend their honor viciously, as it is truly all they have. And which chapter master would want to go down in the eternal history of his brotherhood as a man who permitted their most cherished relic to be destroyed? A rare individual indeed. Oh, and yes, it weighs 300 tons. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Like and subscribe, tip if I have earned your bounty, and do check out the video description for other entertainment opportunities and codes to make potential savings on games. But most importantly of all, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.